WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively moving into the summer with or without baseball. Luke Jones is my chemo sabi and partner in crime. Luke, first things first, I want to apologize to you. It's been a little while since we've been together. I know I'm beaching a little. You're beaching a lot. We're doing 4th of July. I have not shipped you any of the Taharka ice cream, and I want to apologize. I'm holding up nothing but empty canisters, and we're getting more here. My wife is contributing empty caramel crunch. We have empty key lime pie. Sadly, I now have 2 empty Honey Graham Taharka pints. I have no Honey Graham ice cream left, so it is time to get up I-83. I know you've been waiting on baseball and hanging out, and we haven't caught up much. We bitched about baseball 2 weeks ago. John Harbaugh's bitching about football right now, but we're now in the strangest place we've ever been in our lives, right? Like guys like you and me, that all of our lives, sports has been the central part of every single thing in my life, not just professionally, but personally, from the time I watched the Orioles in the summer of 1972, right? So I don't know where we are in this, but it is really Twilight Zone-y, and I want to get a little baseball update for this week in that all it's been is one very, very painful negotiation amongst lawyers, and I think the fans are as disenchanted as they've ever been in my lifetime. You know, that if these clowns come back and play 3 weeks from now, I'm not even really sure how many people are going to be all that jonesed about watching it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to dispute that right now. And to go back to the point you made, I mean, it is a very surreal time in general. You talk about mid-June. The NBA Finals are just about wrapping up. The Stanley Cup Finals have just wrapped up. And baseball, you know, we always talk about what? Post-Memorial Day is when you really get a good idea of what teams are like. And there's just nothing of that. I mean, there's a colossal void there that none of us have experienced. We've had work stoppages in various sports, but to not have any of that, save for a little bit of NASCAR if that's your thing, a little bit of golf now if that's your thing, some European soccer and international, some events there, but it's just a lot to wait on. And,
my wife broke out the guitar. She's going to take lessons. I mean, that's what she's decided she's going to do. You know, like, we're not watching baseball every night. We're not watching movies every night. I'm done with Guy Fieri. You know what I mean? Like, I've been cooking, cleaning, and writing is all I've been doing. And I don't know. The Orioles are so bad, right? Like that they were going to play this summer. There is a part for me that by now I'm out of the soap opera anyway. I mean, I know it's you love it still at this point in your life. I do not love bad baseball. I do not love slow baseball. I do not love last place. I've had enough of it in my life. And the Orioles were going to be god-awful had they played 162 games. I'm sure if they play 48 or whatever this number that they all get together and decide that they can screw each other, which is all they're really interested in doing, is making as much money as they can and screwing each other. When they do that, I don't know how interested I'm going to be in a 14-34 Orioles campaign. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I mean, it's going to feel a little bit like the Arizona Fall League, right? A little bit, right?
It's strange, but I'll also say this, and look, I'm not making any grand prediction here, but you and I both know if you're talking about a 50-game season, weird things can happen. I mean, the 2005 Orioles were in first place after 50 games. The 2010 Buck Showalter late season higher Orioles went, I think, 34-23 down the stretch, and they were god-awful.
Maybe John Means can go 8-1 and win the Cy Young.
I was just going to say, it'd be hilarious if the Orioles figure out a way to go.
Hey, Luke, he was a 9-game winner. He was a 9-game winner that year, you know?
Yeah, I mean, go 26-24 and sneak in as the second wild card. There's going to be a team like that. I don't think it's going to be the Orioles, to be very clear. I don't want to put that idea out there that.
Well, I don't know that they're going to play.
Like
I don't want to put the idea out that they're actually going to play because people keep saying they're going to play. I'm not convinced of that.
Well, but I think it still comes down to this: when the two sides made their agreement back in late March, this idea of prorated pay, the one caveat, so much talk has been about the quote economic feasibility language in that agreement in terms of how players have said, well, that means you're not getting your prorated pay. Players have said, you haven't negotiated at all. You've given us the same exact offer and called it a dozen, 12, and 6 plus 6. It's been the same exact offer. They're just dressing it up. They're putting different wrapping paper on it. So really, I mean, you said a negotiation. Really hasn't been a negotiation whatsoever. There hasn't been any movement from the owner's front. Some people can say both sides, and I continue to look at this thing, and I see Major League Baseball over the weekend a report of a $1 billion new TV deal with Turner coming up, and we know how profitable MLB Advanced Media is, and we know how free agent prices have been depressed here in recent years. And I keep coming back to this idea that the owners, they're not throwing extra money at the players when times are good. So why is it at the first sign of trouble they're expecting players to endure losses with them? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So what we have, though, getting back to the point about whether there'll be a season, in the compromise that was reached back in March, it was made clear that ultimately Rob Manfred could have the autonomy to set a whatever number of games they see fit to have a season. And with the latest offer over the weekend and the players' response, where they basically just said, look, you guys keep offering us the same thing over and over and over. You're not moving whatsoever. So Manfred, set the number of games we're going to play, and we'll show up and play ball. Now, there are certainly many issues that still need to be addressed or finalized or fine-tuned in terms of safety, in terms of COVID, in terms of any at-risk players potentially opting out. And certainly there are some issues in there that could derail a season. But, I've felt for several weeks now, I think there's going to be a season, but how long it is and how well it's received, coming back to the point you made, you have a lot of fans right now who are easily as disenchanted as the 1994-95 player strike. And, to try to overcome that, understanding that who knows what's going to be the climate and the environment that we're living in next year without a vaccine present and widely distributed. And, of course, the CBA expires after the 2021 season. So as much as I appreciate and understand the idealistic mindset of fans wanting to have baseball back, and look, I want it back too. I love baseball. You know that. That's my favorite sport. But it is impossible to separate the business side of this when you consider where these sides have been really for all time in baseball, but specifically the last few years under this current CBA, under a depressed free agent market, and now you throw a pandemic into it and how this has worked. I know a lot of people have said, "Oh, both sides," and I blame the players and the owners. I just have a tough time looking at this thing and really putting any blame on the players' side, because there's a labor war that we thought was coming 2 years from now, and it arrived 2 years earlier with a pandemic that no one could foresee, and now baseball is dealing with a mess. And on top of that sport being the biggest victim in terms of timing compared to the NHL or the NBA or the NFL, and it's an absolute mess. What do you want me to say? It is an absolute mess. And
the Orioles, on top of that, dude, the Orioles have a lease agreement going up next year, right? And maybe no season this year, and certainly not very good baseball, as we pointed out, if they played.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced the Angelos boys want to play baseball, right? And I know everybody's dummied up, and there's a moratorium on everything except race. And you're allowed to say whatever you want, whenever you want. The Angelos boys have spoken out. I'm surprised. Louis Angelos is very anti-Trump out on Twitter, so I've been watching that as well. But they haven't said anything like, we really want to get on the field. We really want to get back to baseball. Yeah. We really want to see our uniforms on the field. We really want to see our hometown vibrant again. I don't get anything. And I know we'll get to Steve Bisciotti and we'll get to that Ravens video, and that's its own thing. I don't want to compare purple to orange today, because I've been doing that for 30 years here, right? But I do want to say on the baseball side there is a part of me who lives in downtown Baltimore that I'm wondering what the value of them playing games where no one comes, in the same way I wondered that 5 years ago. And then I wonder, like, why bother if you're them? If you can't win and you're going to lose money opening the doors, and it's going to be an embarrassment and quite frankly, a hassle. A lot of work to lose money. I've done this before. See my soccer tournament back in 2010, right? So, doing a lot of work and losing money, and then the rain comes that day and washes the event out that was going to lose money anyway. You're almost better to have it rain and just say, we never opened. Now, that's the way you do a bad bull roast. That's not the way you do Major League Baseball, 75 years into being a civic treasure, and you built the stadium downtown. I keep going back to being the mayor of Baltimore, Luke, and I'll be doing that a lot over the next 4 years, right? Where I say to myself, what value do the Baltimore Orioles have if they're not putting people in hotels, if they're not generating tax revenue, if they're not parking cars, if we don't have peanut vendors, if we don't have beer vendors, if Pickles isn't making money, if Roost Chris isn't selling a steak, if Harbor Place isn't vibrant, if it's not helping the tax base, why did we build the stadium 30 years ago? And these are all questions we're going to ask again as I've pointed out many times, we're going to rebuild the stadium again next year because it's 30 years. It's 30 years up. They're a franchise. They're capitalists. They're going to talk about being here when Francis Scott Key's still here and like the Star Spangled Banner. And I know, this orange goof wants to fly the effing Confederate flag, here in Dixie. But as long as we have Major League Baseball and this franchise exists and we have this stadium here, my thought is always, how can this be made better? How can this be maximized? And I still think about the Angelos guys and where they are right now. June 15th, heading into a season that may or may not start July 15th, where they are going to lose money if they play or make less money or embarrass themselves. I would love to know if they really want to play baseball or not. And if it's, we'd like to play, but we can't have fans, and that's kind of stupid, and we're going to lose money, and we're clearly not going to win on the field, I really do wonder whether they want to play baseball or not. It feels to me like they don't, and it feels to me like economically I would look at it and say, if the rainstorms coming to wash away the bad bull roast on Saturday and it never happened, maybe we're better off doing it that way. And I have no idea what kind of leverage crap they're going to pull next year to heist the baseball team out of the city. Because that's next on the menu, Luke. That is next on the menu.
Well, I mean, whether they're going to move the team, I think there's a lot between that happening, and everything that's going to play out between now and that potential scenario. But certainly the lease is, it has to be addressed. There's no question about that.
All I hear is silence, and that's not good. That's not good.
Yeah.
If you want to be here and you're making headway and you're going to be a community partner and you're serious about Luke, they've never shown any interest in human beings. The Angelos family, in 30 years, I've often thought about what I'm going to write the day he dies. I mean, the one thing I've seen for sure is that they have zero respect for people. They don't mingle with people. The Angelos family does not branch out and grow its tree in regard to Baltimoreans because and if they're going to keep the team and live in Nashville, I don't know how it's ever really going to get corrected if TJ Brightman's going to be the guy running it around here. And I guess my point is we're up against all of this, and you're following this drama with Manfred and Clark but the team itself, the franchise that lives here, that roots here, that wants my money, that wants my love, that wants my respect, that wants my time, that wants my heart, and wants me to promote them, they're just not a factor. They're not found. And that has nothing to do with the Bisciotti video next week or Harbaugh popping off about COVID. We'll get to that. I'm just talking about it's baseball season. Where the hell are they?
Well, and part of it's also the direct timing that they're in the middle of a colossal rebuild. If this had happened in 2014 when the team was really good, it'd be a different conversation. Would it be the ideal, pristine, perfect scenario?
Yeah, would
No, it
Buck
wasn't
be
perfect
checking
then.
in from Dallas every day with a Zoom? I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. But I'll say this, and I want to go back to what you said kind of at the start of your
Rant.
your little monologue there was I think that's what's made this so frustrating for the players in general, and certainly with the Orioles fitting into that group of 30 clubs, is the players they've been very united in their messaging. You haven't heard any real meaningful public dissension among the players. Even over the weekend in the NBA, you had Kyrie Irving and Dwight Howard speaking out about the NBA resuming and the climate of Black Lives Matter and the protests and players being quarantined in Orlando. You haven't heard anything like that from the baseball players. There's been a very unified front. Whether they've handled negotiations well or not, certainly we can all debate, those various aspects. But I think on the owner's side, and considering there really hasn't been a negotiation, again, it's been 12, 6 plus 6, 4 plus 8, 5 plus 7. You look at their deals and continue to break them down, they've offered the same exact thing. They're just putting different lipstick on it. And there's very much a question among the 30 owners, do they really want to play? And I think teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers, where they have absolutely lucrative, very, very profitable regional sports networks, I think the answer is pretty clearly yes. I think the answer is pretty clearly yes on teams that are very much firmly in contention. But then you do get to smaller market teams. You do get to teams that, like the Orioles, who had no designs whatsoever of even trying to contend. Even if they tried to, it wasn't going to be successful. And you do wonder. Look at the Orioles from a strictly a baseball position. It would have been more valuable for them to have a minor league season than a major league season this year, to let the likes of D.L. Hall and Adley Rutschman continue to develop, compared to playing 50 or 75 or 80 or 100 major league games. Now, that's not to say the Orioles can't get a little bit of value from the major league product, and Ryan Mountcastle, for example, or Austin Hayes, but it is a very different animal how they're looking at and how they were originally looking at the 2020 season compared to teams that are vying to win the World Series this year. So, and that kind of gets into the topic of tanking and, whether we're talking about a team rebuilding a little more organically, whether we're talking about a team not trying to win whatsoever. You've always had some of that to some degree, but how that's been something that's been on the forefront of discussion and labor disputes and player frustration over the last few years. And now you have this sense that it's almost as though the owners have tanked on having a season, and that's really where we are. And we keep coming back to that dispute. When they came up with their agreement, the players and the owners in late March, the resumption of play agreement, they had the 3 criteria. 1, no restrictions against fans attending games. Clearly, that's going to be something that, there are going to be restrictions, even if there are a percentage of fans allowed in at some point. No restrictions on travel between the U.S. and Canada. And then the other one was no unreasonable health or safety risk to players, staff, or fans. Certainly there's a discussion that still could be had there at this point in time and the uncertainty. But it keeps coming back to the concept of discussing, quote, in good faith, the economic feasibility of playing games in the absence of spectators. The owners have unequivocally taken that statement and said that means no prorated pay. The players have said there is no explicit language in that agreement that says we must take less than what our prorated pay is supposed to be. And what you've had is a stalemate, an impasse, whatever you want to call it, and it's led to this environment where there's no progress that's been made whatsoever. Rob Manfred is going to set an arbitrarily small number of games. Because the owners need players' approval to then expand the postseason, we're going to end up getting a standard-sized postseason and probably a grievance filed by the union that'll get resolved at some point next year. And, we'll kind of...
all of our lives, and we've talked about this, 73 with Messersmith and back to Curt Flood, and I'm sure there was plenty of racism involved in that as well, and Lords of the Realm and the whole history of baseball. But I don't, maybe I'm foolish, but there was a period maybe 10, 15 years ago when everybody was sort of making money where you felt like the relationship was getting better. And I guess the NBA would be the one place where they've sort of figured it out, but the players run the league and they just do. And in a sport where, one player, two players turns the whole franchise around, unlike any other sport, by the way, and an international sport, unlike any other sport, a truly international sport that, the NFL is not, and baseball is not, and certainly hockey is not. When I'm talking about around the world, soccer and basketball are, the rest just kind of aren't, right? But the baseball side of the labor negotiations for the modern player, I'm talking about Max Scherzer, and how that relates to Jim Palmer, right? That Jim Palmer played with, I don't know, name somebody that was around that bridged the gap from Mark Belanger to Don Fehr to Tony Clark. Tony Clark's probably a great example because he actually played, right? All of these guys that were involved in this, to have that bit between their teeth, to be so pissed off. Brooks Robinson representing the nicest man on earth, representing the alumni for 25 years, and really the alumni of his era that really got screwed. They only really made money when they signed autographs, right? When it was all over with, or they got a TV gig or whatever, right? Or you're Pete Rose and you make an industry out of being a bandit, a renegade, right? The modern players have made so much money. The Roger Clemens, Curt Schilling, Mark McGwire era, and the filthiness of the steroids, and how that didn't appeal to the Brooks Robinsons and the Tom Seavers, of that era. This modern era, the one thing that all the old-timers and all the rich guys, all the Cal Ripkens would tell them is, these people are going to screw you. The owners are going to try to screw you. They're not Augie Bush anymore, and it's not Marge Schott. They're not overt racists, maybe the way they once were. They're monoliths in their corporations, but they're going to try to screw you. And I don't know that Adam Jones would have had a bad taste in his mouth, because Adam Jones made $120 million playing Major League Baseball, and he's still really pissed off because he's over in Japan, and in the end, they made more than he did, and they screwed him a little bit. And I know Flanagan died pissed off about collusion back in the 80s and Andy McPhail's role in that and all of that. But the modern player, they had another chance to not have Trey Mancini be a part of the bile, right? A guy who hadn't even been paid yet, right? That Manny Machado, who got his money, that the young guys, not Trout, but the guys who haven't gotten their money, now they're mixed up in cheating, drugs, collective bargaining, owners that don't want to play, owners that don't want to pay, teams that don't want to compete, franchises that want to tank. A guy like Machado winds up here and can't wait to get the hell out of here, or maybe the franchise might be the next thing gone, like Burt Jones. So I would just say they've really poisoned the well now for another 20 years, right? No matter where baseball comes out of this, no matter where America comes out of this with COVID, no matter where the Orioles wind up playing, whether it's Portland or Nashville, they have now taken a full generation of Heston Kjerstads, who looks like he's 12 years old, and they've now got his radar up on the Boris side of, this is going to be a war all of your career. They're going to hate you. You're going to hate them. Remember what they did to you back in 2020, right? It's no longer remember 69 with Flood or 73 with Messersmith or 81 with the walkout or 94 where they canceled the World Series. This is the new generation of war, and it's going to be war forever. And it's always been war. But for the young people, this is their awakening. This is their little, their reminder to go back and read Lords of the Realm, right?
Yeah, it is. But all the examples you just cited kind of also cite the fact that it's always been war. Go back to the reserve clause, go back to the gentleman's agreement as far as segregation in Major League Baseball. I mean, it's always been very, very dirty in that way. And that's not to forgive it. It's to place it in the proper context. I mean, some of the issues Major League Baseball or the players are having right now, I go back to how poor of a job they did from their side on the last collective bargaining agreement, where they, the luxury tax threshold and where they basically have allowed a soft cap. And owners have certainly manipulated to have that, to the point where we've even seen the highest spending teams refrain a little bit more to try to stay under the threshold. We've seen that. Players were more concerned about a few extra off days, an extra seat on the spring training bus. And look, we talked about this 3 or 4 years ago when that happened. And now you throw a pandemic into it where, again, some of the criticism Major League Baseball has gotten, they have been a victim of very bad timing compared to the other professional sports. But from the player side, because I've heard a lot of people say this, even friends of mine, that I've seen over the last couple of weeks, socially distanced, where it's like, why aren't the players compromising? Well, here's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen in 2021, which is the last year of the collective bargaining agreement. If you're the players and the opinion that you have is they should compromise for the good of the game, well, they take less than prorated pay, even though there was an agreement made in March for them to take prorated pay. What does that mean for 2021? You've already given the owners leverage to impact your pay again, assuming COVID is still a factor come next March and April. And I don't know, let's say attendance is 75% capacity. Even if things are positive, we don't know if it's going to be back to fully normal at that point. So you take a pay cut this year, you potentially put yourselves in position where you're going to have to take one next year, and then, the CBA expires after that. So, it's just, as much as I understand fans' frustration with the business side getting in the way, how can you not acknowledge the business side of it if you're the players? And from the owner's perspective, as we've talked about over and over and over here in recent years, and I've expressed my frustration to you about the contraction of the minor leagues, the asinine in-market streaming rules and blackouts and things of that nature, things that you should be encouraging to grow the game, that owners have said, well, we can't let that cut into our short-term profit. Well, this is another scenario where you're going to hurt yourself long-term, and you're just going to continue to drift into the background. Well, whereas the NFL will continue to flourish, the NBA will likely continue to flourish, and baseball kind of moves closer.
And they're playing golf on Sundays.
Well, and again, some of these sports that we're talking about,
but my point is, you got something else you can do. You know what I mean? My wife's going to learn to play the guitar.
Sure.
I'm going to the beach next week. You're going to the beach the week after next. And you'll get pizza and you'll be happy, and, we'll move on. And at some point, they'll either be dribbling in Orlando or shooting pucks in Phoenix or wherever the hell they're going to play hockey. And, and baseball will sit around and hold their noses and point at each other. And then, as a community, Luke, I keep going back to this, as a community, Forget baseball. As a community, I have this stadium 2 blocks from my house that I'm paying for as a taxpayer that sits empty, and these creeps that own the team that have disappeared from humanity except on Twitter when they want to come out and say something liberal to let everybody know that they're good guys. There's 1 year left on the lease, and I've built a company around sports here for 30 years. I'm going to have a lot of questions. People are going to be happy I didn't run for mayor, because I am going to run for are the Orioles staying here or not? Because I'm going to turn that up to an 11, to honor my cousin, in the next 11 months, because it should be the question everyone here is asking. And I remember when the Orioles used to be important here, Luke, and it used to be like a front page above the fold thing as to whether they were staying in town, leaving town, building stadiums, in first place, in last place, what the owner said, what free agent they were signing, what night was fireworks night. I remember when the baseball team was a really relevant, living, breathing community organism. And they have this might be the most egregious thing they've done if they're not going to play a season and they're going to turtle up and shut up and not talk about the future of the franchise in our city. We got a new mayor here. I don't think it's on his mind. He put a picture of himself, him and his mom in an Oriole hat down at Camden. But he's now the mayor, and he's going to have to answer these questions. I remember Mayor Schaefer on the doorstep of his house the day that the Colts left town back in '84.
Yeah.
I am gravely concerned about the future of the franchise, let alone whether they're going to come out here and play 50 awful baseball games this summer. I'm way more worried about the big picture. I really am.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it, whether you're concerned about the future of the franchise or not, if you're an Orioles fan, it's all about the big picture. Even if you want to talk about it from a baseball
Yeah, you
standpoint.
want them to win again. You just don't want it to be in Nashville in 2026.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the whole thing with looking at the rebuild. I mean, of course they were going to be bad in 2020, whether it was going to be 50 games or 162. But yeah, I mean, until there is a lease, until there is an agreement, that question has to be there. It'd be disingenuous to ignore it. That's not to say that I am predicting they're going to move or anything like that. But until there's an agreement, there's no agreement, right? I mean, that's the way these things work. So, when you're talking about the complications that were already present and challenges already present with the city, and now this, and when you have a lease that's expiring, and
somebody like me should be asking questions. I mean, nobody else is asking about this. Like it's mind-blowing to me, Luke. I mean, I don't see anything in the paper. I don't see anything online. I mean, Schmuck's running off to his retirement, and, COVID's taking over the city. We got a new mayor. What's the future of the baseball team? We built a stadium in the middle of the city to support this. The whole idea was 81 summer nights at Ruth's Chris and the Sheridan and the Hyatt and the Harbor and boats and taxis and water taxis and mothers and Cross Street and all of that. What the hell happened to all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I will say this: in the current times we're in, I think we've had a single focus in a lot of different ways in all aspects of our lives. So, something like that maybe does go to the peripheral a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, and I'm not going to sit here and say that you're wrong or that I know what the outcome's going to be. But it's all of this on top of things you and I were talking about like this the last couple of years. It's definitely an unsettling feeling until you know that that's not going to be the final outcome.
Well, I'm wearing my Keep the Preakness in Baltimore a pin here. Appreciate you, Damian O'Doherty. Big appreciation to our friends at Sporticulture as well. Luke, one of the reasons I'm always delayed is I have this beautiful magma lamp here, and when I'm not broadcasting, I'm so afraid of knocking it over because it's made of glass, so I have to take it down and put it up. But they're beautiful. You can order them. College teams, sports, football, all of them available at Sporticulture, as well as the flowers that we get here on the set as well. I have my Maryland Terps. Maybe I'll put the Terp one up for the summer to give love to the Free State and all that. Our friends at Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Got to tell everybody the Chicken Palooza is right around the corner. We're a couple of weeks away. It's going to get me a new shirt. I have green and I have blue. I wonder if they're going to go raspberry colored Chicken Palooza shirts this summer. But Chicken Palooza around the corner. Our friends at Royal Farms doing all sorts of great stuff with the Maryland Food Bank and feeding people. They did living classrooms last week, and of course we talked so much about living classrooms in our partnership with head coach Brian Billick. I'm going to get Coach on later on in the month as well. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Get the fried chicken, world famous fried chicken, or of course get the Western fries. They're delicious. Planet Fitness, still working out at night, 7 o'clock each and every night. Make sure you're checking that out at planetfitness.com. Still trying to get you in shape. My wife is in the best shape she's been in. We're heading to the beach here a little later on as well. Also want to give some love to State Farm and our friend Mimi Brown. 410-878-0232. Mimi at insuringbmore.com. I'm going to join her over at the Chaucer in Highlandtown sometime for a little ahi tuna. Big shout out to my friend Brian for having my wife and I in there as well. Taharka is our newest sponsor. We got ice cream everywhere. At some point, I'll get my wife had the key lime. I got 2 empty Honey Graham containers here. My wife's really into the key lime, and we talk so much about. I don't like key lime pie. But this thing here, it's so key limey. Wow, the empty container smells like a margarita, and I'm not lying to you. So get the key lime pie if you're into such things. She loves the roasted strawberry as well. I'm sweet, so I like me some Honey Graham, and I've been into the eggnog. The chocolate love is unbelievably good as well. It's like a chocolate brownie, deep, dark chocolate. Taharka, sponsoring us, local, made in Baltimore, using the award-winning ice cream to serve up social change. Taharka Brothers, made in Baltimore, just like WNST.net. You can email me, nasty at WNST.net. Baseball, football, and we're going to do some politics around here. We're doing a lot of conversations out of Baltimore Positive right now. about race, about policing, about change in our country, about protest, and about elections. Congratulations to Brandon Scott, the primary winner in the Democratic campaign. We've had Brandon on several times. You can find that at Baltimore Positive. We're hoping to have him on sometime soon to talk about a summer of political unrest in our country, and we need a new president. I'm going to be talking about that the next 4 months as well. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, all over the world at WNST.net. We are AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, keeping calm, staying local, and always Baltimore positive.